They said words had power, but some words were never meant to be spoken. They were forged in grief, in rage, in moments when men reached for something they should never have touched. And when they did, the world remembered. The Curse of the Pharaohs was one of the first. It began not with gold, but with silence. When Howard Carter broke the seal of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, the air that rushed out had been trapped for 3,000 years. The newspapers wrote about treasures and discovery, but the locals whispered of something else, the warning carved into the walls. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king. When Lord Carnarvon, Carter's patron, died weeks later, feverish, bitten by a mosquito that turned to infection, the legend took root. Lights flickered in Cairo, dogs howled in unison, and his canary was found dead, swallowed by a cobra. Coincidence, said the rationale. But coincidence became pattern. Archaeologists fell ill, workers vanished, and letters spoke of strange shadows moving in the tomb at night. Some said it was poison, ancient and lingering. Others said it was something older, the vengeance of a god who had slept too long. Even Carter himself, years later, confessed that sometimes he heard breathing in the dark chambers of the tomb, long after everyone had left. The curse was not in the words, it was in the act. In the moment, man reached through time and touched eternity, and eternity reached back. The second came from the cold, from the mountains of the Balkans, where the snow falls like ash and superstition lingers in every shadow. They called it the Curse of the Vladaya Mirror. No one knows when it was made, only that it was found in the ruins of a monastery burned during the Ottoman Wars. The villagers said it had been forged by a monk who tried to trap the devil's reflection. The glass was dark, almost black, framed in silver that had melted and cooled unevenly, like something burned too long. Those who looked into it saw more than themselves. Sometimes they saw their reflection blink when they hadn't. Sometimes it smiled back. And sometimes they saw the room behind them, empty, though they knew they weren't alone. It was said that to gaze too long was to invite what was trapped inside to trade places. The mirror has passed through hands over centuries. Collectors, nobles, even an artist who swore it whispered inspiration into his ear at night. He painted faces that no one recognized, eyes too human to be imagined. When he was found, his mirrors were covered in sheets, and his last canvas was unfinished. A self-portrait, smiling, painted from the wrong perspective. The Vladaya mirror has since vanished, said to be locked in a vault beneath Sofia, but sometimes, at auctions, a black-framed mirror appears with no history, and sometimes people still buy it. In the heart of Rome, beneath the City of Saints, lies another curse, one not written, but spoken, the Maledictum Tenebris, the Curse of Darkness. It began with a name erased from history, a priest who betrayed his order, using sacred rites for blasphemy. When he was caught, he did not plead, he laughed, and before they buried him alive in the catacombs, he said a single thing, "In silence, I will be heard." The years passed, the tunnel sealed, and the city rose above him. But strange things began to happen in the crypts. Candles would not burn, voices echoed from walls, long bricked shut. Pilgrims felt hands brush their shoulders in the dark, and monks awoke with dirt beneath their nails, as if they'd been digging. The Vatican archivists who investigated wrote nothing down, but sealed the corridor and marked it with a single symbol: Vox Nox, the voice of night. They say, if you whisper your name 3 times in that place, something will answer. And if it does, your voice will never sound the same again. Some believe it was the priest's revenge, that he cursed the silence itself so that any who disturbed it would lose their soul to the echo. Others think it's the darkness that remembers, the weight of sin compacted so deep into stone that it learned to speak. The Maledictum is not a spell. It is the price of hearing what was never meant to be heard. Far from Rome, in the jungles of Java, there was a curse born not from death, but from love. They call it the Layang Sari, the letter of the damned. It was said to have been written by a princess betrayed by her lover, a soldier who left her for war and never returned. When his ship sank, she wrote him a final letter, her tears mixed with ink, her words pleading for reunion in death. but she was not allowed to die. The gods pitied her, or perhaps punished her, and her spirit lingered, bound to the letter she wrote. Centuries later, during the Dutch colonization, the letter was discovered. Sealed in a bamboo tube, the script faded to brown. Every man who tried to read it died within days. Their bodies showed no wound, no mark, only the faint scent of jasmine and salt water. Scholars tried to translate it, but the letters shifted on the page, curling like smoke, vanishing when copied. The last attempt was made by a linguist from Amsterdam. He managed only one line before he went mad. It read, "Love me or drown with me." The letter was locked away, its contents never fully known, but in some villages, the old women still burn paper before the sea, whispering apologies for the words that should have never been written. And then there was the curse that belonged to no man and every man, the sigil of Kaidesh. It appeared in the desert, carved into stone that had never been touched by hand. A circle within a circle, written in a language older than Sumer. The first archaeologist who saw it, a woman named Elsira Beaumont, recorded its design in her journal. That night, she dreamed of voices chanting her name over and over as the stars moved in patterns unseen. She awoke to find the same sigil burned into her tent canvas. Her team thought it a prank, but the same mark began to appear on their belongings, on metal, on leather, on skin. Within a week, half the expedition was gone. Those who fled the site spoke of visions, hands rising from the dunes, whispering promises of knowledge in exchange for surrender. Elsira never left. When another team arrived months later, her body was gone. Only the sigil remained, carved deeper into the stone, still fresh. Decades passed, and fragments of the same symbol began to appear in other ruins, in Syria, in Egypt, in northern Iran, as if something beneath the sand was moving. Linguists tried to decipher it, calling it pre-Akkadian, but none could agree on its meaning. The closest translation anyone dared to offer was simple: "Remember me or be forgotten." Some say the sigil was never a curse, only a name. Others say it was a door, and Elsira opened it. In the late 1400s, an alchemist in Prague created something he called the Codex Maleficarum, a book of pure knowledge. He claimed it could teach the language of angels and demons alike, that every symbol was alive. It was said he wrote it in a single night, his quill moving on its own, his eyes rolled back as if he were listening to something no one else could hear. When dawn came, his servants found him dead, his body perfectly preserved as if frozen mid-thought. The book was found beside him, its pages warm to the touch. No one could read it. The letters seemed to shift, rearranging themselves when watched too long. A monk who tried to translate it went blind before finishing the first page. Another burned it, or so he thought, but the flames refused to touch it. The codex would disappear and reappear through the centuries, whispered about by collectors and occultists, each claiming they had found the secret. All of them died the same way, ink-black veins spreading across their skin, their mouths open as if still reciting words no living thing should know. Scholars now call it a myth, but they say there are pages in old libraries that hum when the candles go out, faintly, like a pulse. Far to the east, in the deserts of Persia, another curse waited, not in a book, but in a name. They called it the Curse of Zahak, though Zahak himself had been a man once, a king consumed by power. The legend said that when the demon Ahriman kissed his shoulders, two serpents sprouted from his flesh, whispering hunger into his mind. They demanded human brains to feed, and every night the king obeyed. When he died, the demons within him did not. They sank into the earth, into his tomb, whispering still. To speak Zahak's name in certain places, near the mountains where he was bound, was to awaken the hunger. Travelers who mocked the legend vanished. Those who returned brought stories of voices in the wind, hissing softly, "Feed us." Even now, shepherds say that the mountains breathe at night, that they hear sighs echoing through the canyons, like something shifting beneath the rock. Historians call it erosion. The locals call it memory. Zahak was never forgotten, because forgetting was part of the curse. The moment the world forgets him, he will wake. The next curse came from colder lands, a place where winter itself seemed to hold breath. In 17th century Iceland, during a time of famine and faith, there emerged a practice so dreadful that even the church refused to name it aloud. They called it the Narbrok, or corpse trousers. A sorcerer would steal the lower half of a dead man's skin, peel it clean, and wear it like clothing. If the ritual was performed correctly, the trousers would graft to the flesh and never come off. Coins placed in the scrotum of the corpse would ensure endless wealth, but only so long as the wearer never spoke of how he'd earned it. When he died, the curse passed to the next who dared to claim the trousers. Those who wore them grew rich, but they also grew hollow. Their eyes darkened, their bodies wasting away even as their gold multiplied. Some said the trousers whispered at night, reminding their owners that the debt was not yet paid. No one knows how many times they changed hands before the last owner tried to burn them. The trousers didn't burn. They were buried beneath the lava fields near Holmavik, and the ground there still refuses to grow grass. They say if you listen at night, you can hear the faint sound of breathing beneath the stone. But greed was not the only sin to draw curses. Some were born from grief too deep for gods to bear. In Ireland, there was once a woman named Aoibian, a seer whose prophecies always came true. The kings feared her, and the priests tried to silence her, but her visions were unstoppable, until one day she saw the death of her own son. She begged the gods to change his fate. When they refused, she cursed them in return. That curse became known as the Song of Aoibian. It was said that to hear her lament was to know your own death. It would come as a whisper first, a melody with no source, sung in a voice that felt familiar. Then, in dreams, you would see her, a woman in green, her eyes hollow, her lips moving in rhythm to your heartbeat. No one could escape it. When the time came, the song would stop, and so would the heart. Bards feared to sing her name, yet the melody still surfaced, in storms, in fields before battle, in empty halls where the wind howled like a woman mourning. Some said Aoibian's grief was so powerful it became a living thing. Others believed it was not a curse at all, but a mercy, a warning before the end. But those who heard it never had time to decide. In the jungles of West Africa, where the air hums with unseen life, there was another curse, the Igbo mask. It was carved from ebony wood, painted with ash and blood, and made for a ritual that was never meant to be performed again. When the kingdom that created it fell, the mask vanished, only to resurface centuries later during the colonial expeditions. The man who found it brought it to London, placing it in a museum where it drew endless fascination. The first night it was displayed, the guards reported hearing drums in the halls. By morning, the curator was found dead, his body untouched, his face frozen in terror. The mask was removed, then reinstalled. Each time it returned to the light, something happened. Fires broke out, paintings fell. One night, a visitor claimed to see movement behind the glass, the faint shifting of eyes that weren't carved at all. Historians say the Igbo mask was used to bind the spirit of a fallen warrior, that its power was never meant to leave its homeland. When the museum tried to return it, the ship sank in calm seas. The mask was found washed ashore days later, perfectly dry. It remains missing again, and some say it will never rest until it finds the one who first disturbed it. And then there was the last, the one no one dares to name, because even naming it is part of the ritual. They call it simply the ninth tongue. It isn't a curse in words or relics, but in sound itself. It is said that long ago there existed a language so old that even the gods forgot it. It was not learned, it was remembered. Every syllable was alive, every phrase a command. When the last speaker tried to teach it to men, the heavens silenced him, tearing the words from his mouth. But a fragment survived, carved into stone, hidden in the mountains between what is now Turkey and Armenia. Those who found it said it wasn't writing at all, but sound trapped in shape. They could hear it when they closed their eyes. An archaeologist named Parvan claimed to have deciphered 3 words. He never said them aloud, only recorded their rhythm on wax. 2 weeks later, the recording was played at a university lecture. Everyone who heard it began bleeding from their ears. The sound was low, almost human, like a hum stretched too long. The wax cylinder melted from the inside, as if burned by something that wasn't fire. Parvan's notes were destroyed, but one line survived in the margin: "The tongue that unmade itself." Since then, no one has tried to speak it again. But sometimes, when earthquakes roll through those mountains, locals say the ground makes a noise, long, low, and almost like a word trying to remember itself. Some curses are written, some are worn, some are sung, some wait in silence, patient as the dark. Each was forbidden for a reason, not because they were evil, but because they were complete, perfect reflections of what men fear most.